Good morning, everybody. It's Tim Young, and I'm going to share with you my favorite chiropractic story ever. This is volume 15 of Chiro Stories, and we're going to call this, in my opinion, the greatest chiropractic story ever told, next to DD delivering the first adjustment. So many years ago, I walked into a continuing ed seminar as a young doctor, and the speaker said, before you adjust a patient, you need to send them to their MD and make sure that MD clears it. I realized right then I was in the wrong place, and I turned around and walked back out. And standing over in the corner was a couple of doctors, and one of them was Dr. John Carver. We affectionately called him Old Man Carver. And I walked up, and I used to do this all the time, just stand next to him and get him talking. And John Carver was a bit of an icon here in Oklahoma, and really his family is an icon in the profession. So Willard Carver was BJ Palmer's attorney. And Willard had a son, John, who became a chiropractor, who had a son, John, who became a chiropractor, who actually had a son, John, who's still a chiropractor in Oklahoma today. But the middle John, Dr. John Carver, told me this story. He said when he was a boy, his dad used to go on house calls all the time, and they were at home one morning, and they got a phone call that Dr. Carver, Senior Carver, one of his best friends was dying. He was passing, and you might want to come. And so he got his coat on, and well, John Jr., who's telling the story, said, anytime Dad went on a house call, he said, I was the first one in the truck. And he says, so, I got my coat on, and he said, Mom took 2 bricks out of the oven and wrapped them in towels and handed them to me, and I went and got in the truck. I mean, he's telling the story just like this. And I want you guys to think about something. This is in the 1940s, early 40s in Oklahoma in the winter. Now, the reason that, and John's remembering this story vividly. He's told it many times, but you could tell he's thinking about the details. And one of those details I always thought was fascinating, and a lot of you might have missed it. The reason that his mother took bricks out of the oven and wrapped them in towels and handed them to him, because back then, vehicles didn't have heaters. At least this one didn't. And so he would put one on the floor and put his feet on it, and then he'd hold the other one in his lap. That's what kept him warm on this trip. So they get to the farmhouse where this gentleman lived, and as they got out of the truck and was walking up the path, and if you can imagine this, I grew up in the country, so this was very vivid to me. A lot of times there was just a fence around the house to keep the cows out of the front yard, but there was a path from where you parked up to the house, and they were walking up the path. And he said the medical doctor was coming out of the house down the path, and he greeted Dad, and he said they knew each other, and he said, well, I've already signed the death certificate. He's gone. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to go in and just spend time, with the wife, the widow. So he goes in, the widow's sitting at the kitchen table, and she's crying, and and he puts his hand on her shoulder and tries to comfort her, and he said, do you mind if I go and just stand with him for a minute? And she said, that would be fine. And so he walked into the bedroom, and he said he turned around and looked at me. Now, this is John Jr. as a boy telling the story. He said, Dad looked at me and said, shut that door, lean against it, and don't let anybody in. He said, I looked up, and there's this frail, thin, skinny old man laying on the bed, dead. And he said, Dad took him, whipped him around, pulled his head off the back of the bed, where his head was laying back, and he said he gave him, in my opinion, to this day, was probably one of the most violent chiropractic cervical adjustments I've ever seen in my life. I literally thought the old man's head was going to come off in Dad's hands. He said, but that's not what happened. What happened was that old man coughed out loud, and he started sputtering and coughing and choking, and Dad set him up. That old man lived 14 more years. Now, one of my favorite parts of the story is the old man, he owned an auto repair shop where cars come in and he fixed cars, and he took the death certificate and framed it and put it behind the front counter so everybody could see it. Now, there's a lot of, I know that everybody's going to say, no, he wasn't really dead, he wasn't this, he wasn't that didn't happen, it did happen. I believe in my soul that it happened, because John Carver wouldn't lie. This man was the epitome. We've passed now, but he was the epitome of integrity and honesty and transparency. He did more for this profession in Oklahoma. But In my opinion, there's a lot of things that could have went on. I really think that there was still life there, and when he made that adjustment, he took the stress off the occiput, allowed the proprioceptors to fire, and then rebooted the brain, and the body took back over. There's a lot of neurological things that we could discuss. It's irrelevant. What John Carver Jr., when he told the story, and I have it on video. I actually have this on video, him telling the story. It's great. He's just, he's right at his 80 at this point when he's telling a story. He's got his legs crossed. He's a thin old man, and he just tells the story so matter of fact and so just nonchalant. And and at the end of it, he said, well, here's the moral of this story. You never know what you can do unless you try. And so what John was telling us was, never turn a patient away. You never know how powerful that chiropractic adjustment is going to be. It could take a headache away. It could take a back pain away. It could help people sleep better. There's all the things that we hear about all the time, or it could save a life. Listen, I know that was a long story, but it's one of my very favorite stories, and every time I think about it and replay it, it makes me happy to be a chiropractor. And I'll end like the same way I always do. You never know how far outreaching something that you think, say, or do today that will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. I hope you share this story. I hope this story resonates with you. I hope you go into your practices, and I hope you love on your people with everything you got and deliver that life-saving chiropractic adjustment. Love you all. Talk to you soon. Bye.